8 years have gone since my spouse caught me cheating with my boss. Subscribe to see more watching stories videos. My life spiraled out of control 8 years ago. It was the night that my husband, Tom, discovered my affair with my boss, David. It was not a fortuitous discovery. Tom had grown suspicious over time. The late hours at work, the unexpected business travels, and the growing distance in our marriage all added up. But nothing could have prepared me for the expression on his face when he told me the truth. The affair had not been a long-term love tale. It was a succession of stupid decisions made during a difficult period in our marriage. I'd worked with the company for 5 years, and David was charismatic, successful, and seemed to understand my domestic issues in a manner Tom didn't. What began as innocent talks turned into something much more. I knew it was wrong, but the pleasure of secrecy convinced me that the danger was worthwhile. I was mistaken. That night, Tom discovered the emails. Explicit, indisputable proof of my treachery. I did not refute it. There was no use. The pain on his face, the rage, the disbelief, it was all too much to grasp at once. He left the house immediately, and did not return for 2 days. They were the longest 2 days of my life. When he returned, the plan was to pack a bag and depart again. This time for good. Everything was blurry. I took a leave of absence from work because I could not face David. The idea of heading into that office and pretending everything was normal seemed inconceivable. Tom filed for divorce immediately, and I did not oppose it. I had shattered our marriage, and there was no way to repair the harm. I moved out of our house and into a little apartment across town. It was the type of location where no one knew my name, and for the first time in a long time, I liked it that way. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. We didn't have children, so the legally were simpler, but emotionally, it was as complex as it could be. Our families had known one another for years, and the repercussions had far-reaching consequences. Friends choose sides. Some did not choose sides and simply drifted away. The loneliness was oppressive, but I knew I had brought it upon myself. I ultimately returned to work. But I resigned from my position at David's company. I couldn't bear the office rumors or my coworkers' sympathetic or judgmental looks. I obtained a new position at a smaller company where no one knew about my background. It was a new start, but the guilt and remorse remained beneath the surface. I poured myself into work to keep my mind busy, but there was no getting around the fact that I had lost everything that actually mattered. Over the next few years, I struggled to put my life back together. I went to therapy to figure out why I made the decisions I did, and why I endangered my marriage for something so pointless. It wasn't just about the affair, it was about the problems that had accumulated long before David entered the scene. I had to accept the truth that I had not conveyed my feelings to Tom, and had not worked with him to resolve the issues in our marriage. Instead, I had taken the easy way out by looking for a solution in all the wrong places. Tom had moved on, at least according to mutual friends. He began dating again approximately a year after his divorce, and eventually met someone significant. Her name was Emily, and she was nothing like me, compassionate, grounded, and genuine. I heard they were happy together, and part of me was relieved that he had found someone who could provide him with the stability I lacked. 3 years after our divorce, I saw Tom at a friend's wedding. It was the first time we had seen each other since everything happened. We exchanged cordial greetings, but the space between us seemed insurmountable. I could see the traces of pain in his eyes, and the guilt returned. I wasn't sure if he'd ever be able to forgive me, or if I could forgive myself. As time passed, I remained with therapy and sought to restore my life. Joined a support group for those who had experienced infidelity in their relationships, as both victims and perpetrators. It was eye-opening to learn about other people's comparable experiences, and it helped me develop a better understanding of the consequences of my actions. I knew that the affair had wounded both Tom and me. It had warped my perception of myself and my worth, and I wanted to address it. By the 5th year after my divorce, I'd finally found some peace. I had created a small business with a friend from my new profession, something I had always wanted to do but had never had the bravery to do. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was creating something worthwhile. It wasn't a replacement for the life I'd lost, but it was a fresh start, which was something. Around this time, I heard Tom had proposed to Emily. When I saw the photographs on social media, I had a range of emotions. There was a part of me that felt happy for him. I knew he deserved all the love and happiness in the world, but there was also a part of me that felt the weight of what I had lost, a life that could have been mine if I had been stronger, more honest, and less selfish. 8 years have passed since the fatal night. Tom and Emily are married and recently welcomed their first child. When I received the news, I wrote them a note, congratulating them and best wishes. I was not expecting a response, but to my surprise, Tom contacted me a few weeks later. He thanked me for the card and asked if I would be willing to meet for coffee. He stated that he wanted to discuss some topics, not to rekindle anything, but to provide closure. When we met, it felt like seeing an old friend after a long absence, but with a peculiar sensation of familiarity and distance. We discussed our lives, where we'd ended up, and how we'd evolved. Tom told me that, while the affair had greatly upset him, he had also realized that we had both contributed to the dissolution of our marriage. He regretted not being more attentive, failing to recognize warning signs, and taking our relationship for granted. It didn't make my acts any less bad, but it was comforting to hear that he no longer saw me as the story's villain. He said that he had forgiven me not for my sake but for his own tranquility. He stated it took years to get there, but he realized that hanging on to his anger was not helping him. He had a new life, a new family, and he needed to let go of the past in order to completely embrace the future. We parted ways knowing that the experience had helped both of us grow. There was no spectacular reconciliation or rekindling of old embers. Instead, there was a quiet acceptance that we had spent a portion of our life together, and that chapter had come to an end. Today I continue to operate my business, which has outgrown my expectations. I've started dating again, but I'm more cautious and aware of what I want and need in a relationship. I now understand that true happiness is not found in ephemeral excitement or distractions, but in the quiet, consistent effort of creating a life to be proud of. The affair was the most agonizing mistake I'd ever made, yet it taught me more about myself than I could have dreamed. I am no longer the same person I was 8 years ago, and I am grateful for that. I've learned how to be honest with myself, accept my imperfections, and aspire to be a better version of myself. The past cannot be reversed, and I will always bear the consequences of my decisions. However, as time passes, the weight becomes less burdensome. I've realized that, while I lost my marriage, I found something else myself.